Good morning, friends. Are you ready for story time? It's me, Miss Caroline, with Ellsworth Public Library. I was going to get us started with a little bit of movement. So, will you stand up with me today? Because we are going to be owls. Up, up, up. And I'm going to move my camera a little bit so you can see me. And we are going to be owls together. Sometimes it's hard to get this just right. All right. Are you standing up with me? Are you ready to be owls? We're going to read all about and sing all about owls today. Because on Tuesday we have a very special program that's happening on Zoom at 4 o'clock. You can find all the details on our website and the registration link so that we can send you the Zoom information so that you can join us. But at 4 o'clock, we have some friends from the International Owl Center from Houston, Minnesota, that are going to join us on our computer, and we're going to talk all about the wonderful world of owls and how amazing owls are and all the different things that they're able to do because of their special bodies. And you probably will get to meet some owl friends as well. Plus, we have some special owl-themed grab-and-go kits that will be showing up next week as well. So, are you ready? Are you up and moving? Ready to move? All right, what do we know about owls? Owls are a kind of bird, and what do birds have? They have wings, and a lot of them fly, most of them. But owls do for sure. So, we're going to start with our wings. Are you ready? Flap your wings and fly around, fly around, fly around. Flap your wings and fly around, just like an owl. Something else that owls have are really big eyes that are good for seeing at night. So we're going to open our eyes wide and big, all right? Open your eyes big and wide, big and wide, big and wide. Open your eyes big and wide, just like an owl. Sometimes owls, when they're flying, land and they hop around. So now we're going to land and hop around. Are you ready? Land on the ground and hop around, hop around, hop around. Land on the ground and hop around, just like an owl. One other thing that owls can do that is really amazing is they can turn their heads really far, much farther than us, almost like they're turning their heads all the way around. We're not going to be able to do that like an owl, but we can try. So we're going to turn our heads, and what do owls say? Hoo, hoo, and hoo, and we're going to do it as far as we can to one side and then the other. You ready? Turn your head and say woo woo. Say woo woo. Say woo woo. Turn your head and say woo woo. Say hoo hoo hoo. Just like an owl. All right, we're gonna flap our wings and fly around, and we're gonna land one more time, and we're gonna sit down and be ready for a story. You ready? Flap your wings and land in place, land in place, land in place. Flap your wings and land in place, just like an owl. And now you can be ready for our story today. I'm going to start with Little Owl's Snow. Look how big Little Owl's eyes are. And this is by Divya Srinivasan. And there is a whole series of books about Little Owl if you enjoy this one. And this is published by Viking. A chill cut through the forest. Little Owl fluffed his feathers. Something is happening, he thought. What do you see happening? Green leaves turned orange, gold, and brown, and then began to fall. Geese flew off to warmer places, navigating by starlight and honking all the way. Do you ever hear loud honking geese fly over? Look way down here. Who do we have? Little Owl. He sure looks little in that picture. Dry fallen leaves rustled and crackled as animals scurried, preparing for the cold. What animals do you see? Skunks? Hedgehog? I think there's a little mouse. Maybe a squirrel? Bear was eating all day and into the night. Winter's almost here, Little Owl said. Isn't it exciting? Winter's too cold, Bear shuddered. I'm staying in. And who's down here? Bear sleeps through all the fun, Raccoon whispered. You'll see. Bats disappeared into a cave. Caterpillars closed up their cocoons. Goodbye, said Hedgehog. See you in spring. And he wiggled into his warm winter home. Who else is sleeping over here? Little Owl thought he saw a moth, but it was only a leaf in the wind. The forest felt so empty now. Do you see Little Owl? Can you see him? Right there. The friends were making fog when it happened. If you go outside today, you can make fog. Snow! That's what happened. Snow. Soon the forest was blanketed in snow, its crystals glinting in the light. Tracks began to appear. Not everyone was hidden away. Little Owl hopped atop the frozen pond, watching fish swimming underneath. How strange and wonderful it all was. But one night, Little Owl started to miss Hedgehog. Mama, Little Owl asked, how much longer till spring? Snow is like a special secret not everyone can know, Mama said. Are you ready for it to melt away so soon? The forest was very quiet. Little Owl could hear the smallest sounds. Tap, tap. An icicle dripped onto a patch of slush. Mama told Little Owl he would see fireflies again. He would see Hedgehog too, soon enough. Right now, though, it was time to enjoy the snow. How are you all feeling about the snow? It's not as fun to be out in the snow on cold, cold days like today. So maybe you're feeling a little bit like Little Owl and are hoping the snow goes away soon. I'm hoping we can find more time to enjoy it because it will be around for a little while yet, won't it? There's a wide-eyed owl with a pointed nose, two pointed ears, and claws for toes. He sits up high in the tree, and he looks at me, and he looks at you. He flaps his wings, and he says, "Hoo, hoo." You do that with me. There's a wide-eyed owl with a pointed nose, two pointed ears, and claws for toes. He sits up high in the tree, and he looks at me, and he looks at you. He flaps his wings, and he says, "Ooh, ooh." We are going to visit the Arctic, where another kind of owl lives, called a snowy owl. And Tana, who is the girl in our story, helps an owl. So this is Tana's owl, and it's by Rachel and Sean Quitsulik Tinsley, and they are Inuit, which is an indigenous peoples of Canada and Alaska, and they have a connection to the Arctic land, and this story is about Tana and her owl. And this is published by Inhabit Media, which is a Canadian company. And I'm going to read this greeting from the author because it helps us understand the story a little bit. I had a lot of strange pets growing up. That was how things were way back. In the Arctic of many decades ago, animals were around us all the time. We didn't just need them to survive. They were our companions. We used to respect them. Our ancient stories even said they were family. Inuit have lots of names. That's because some of them are magical. Tana is one of my magical names. It means that one over there. Owls are magical too. Inuit were always careful way back to note whatever belonged to the land, sea, or sky, and the most magical animals were those who brought these things together. Owls, you see, can fly, but they're raised on the land, so they bring land and sky together. I'm about to tell you a little bit about my owl. In truth, it wasn't even my owl. I don't think you can really own an animal, or a piece of land, or anything actually. You can only bring things together, learn to help, to care. I wonder if my father wanted me to know that. Summer began and Tana's owl arrived. Her father had returned from hunting with him. He'd brought an owl. Why did father get me such an ugly thing? Thought Tana. Look how little that owl is. The baby owl was round, gray-brown. Its eyes were big and yellow. Its beaky mouth seemed wide enough to swallow its own head. But, Tana thought, it's somehow cute. You'll have to take good care of it, father told her. It has no mother. It'll need to eat 2 or 3 times a day. That night, Tana set her alarm for 4:00 a.m. She had the shortest sleep of her life. She had to catch lemmings. There was no bird food, and the owl would not have eaten it anyway. But her brothers and sisters helped. Lemmings are kind of like little mice, hamstery rodents that live in the Arctic, and owls love them. Tana named the owl Ukpik, then in Uktut for owl. Ukpik lived in her father's workshop. Tana thought of the bird as a she. Line the floor with papers, said father, as it will poop a lot. When Ukpik did not get her food right away early in the morning, she would stomp her feet. She would sway back and forth. She would chomp her beak. At least she can communicate, Tana thought to herself. After feeding Ukpik, Tana would stare into the bird's light golden eyes. She wondered if owls had thoughts. "Father, does Ukpik know she's an owl?" asked Tana. "It knows you feed it," Father said, smiling. Ukpik soon tired Tana out. The owl became more and more demanding. No matter how much Tana fed her, Ukpik still stomped, swayed, chomped. Tana wondered if the bird was sick. She took Ukpik outside and placed her on the ground. "What do you want, you alien thing?" Ukpik just stared at her. Then, creepily, the owl turned her head around backwards, watching the family dogs. Looking at Ukpik like that made Tana's own neck feel sore. You see how far the owl has their head turned? Soon, Tana's brothers and sisters grew sick of catching lemmings. "Owls need lemmings," Tana protested, but they'd seen Ukpik eat. They said she was gross. "Can Ukpik eat fish?" Tana asked Father. "It can probably eat whatever fits in its mouth," he told her. Soon, Ukpik was eating any kind of meat or fish, even caribou. The owl was no longer cute. Feeding her was an awful chore. Ukpik's beak was sharp as blades. She snatched at her food. Tana had to wear gloves. How big that little owl is getting. One rainy day, Tana took Ukpik outside. The owl was no longer gray and brown. She was growing white plumes. The feathers on her feet were thick as polar bear fur. Her talons were like little black knives. Ukpik looked around as though bored. Then she stared at the sky as though to say, "I should be up there." Tana picked up the owl and moved her up and down. Ukpik was too young to fly, but she started to flap her wings. Maybe, thought Tana, pretending to fly will make her feel better. Summer ended. Tana had to leave her community for school. She worried about Ukpik, who had been left behind and had never flown. But Tana was happy not to get up at 4 a.m., or catch lemmings, or see stomping, or hear chomping. When the next summer arrived, Tana came home. Ukpik was gone. "It was grown," Father told her. "The owl didn't belong to us. It had to fly free." "She flew?" thought Tana, and she smiled. One day, Tana went walking. Even though Ukpik had been so much work, she missed the owl a little. Tana picked an Arctic poppy, its golden petals like frozen sunlight. Then she was startled by movement. Something white. An Ukpik? The beautiful owl landed on a rocky hill purpled with tiny flowers. It blinked at Tana. Its eyes were the same color as Tana's poppy. My Ukpik? Tana wondered. Bird and girl watched each other for a long time. Arctic winds stirred Tana's black hair and the owl's white feathers. Tana didn't know if this was Ukpik. She wanted to believe, though. She wanted to think that Ukpik had come by just to show how lovely she'd become. Maybe, Tana thought as she walked away, beauty is worth some work. So Tana's owl grew up to be a white owl, a snowy owl. Actually, some years, or there's a series of years, they call it an eruption. Sometimes we can see snowy owls here in this area, and maybe even a little up north. up by Amory. Um, so if you ever get a chance to see one, they're pretty amazing. All right, time for one more song. Hoot, hoot went the little brown owl one day. Hoot, hoot went the little brown owl. Hoot, hoot went the little brown owl one day. They all went hoot, hoot, hoot. But we know owls go sha-na-na-na-na, sha-na-na-na-na, sha-na-na-na-na. We know owls go sha-na-na-na-na. They don't go hoot, hoot, hoot. Hoot, hoot went the little brown owl one day. Hoot, hoot went the little brown owl. Hoot, hoot went the little brown owl one day. And all went hoot, hoot, hoot. But we know owls go la-di-la-di-la, la-di-la-di-la, la-di-la-di-la. We know owls go la-di-la-di-da. They don't go hoot, hoot, hoot. Can you join me for this last one? Hoot, hoot went the little brown owl one day. Hoot, hoot went the little brown owl. Hoot, hoot went the little brown owl one day. And they all went hoot, hoot, hoot. But we know owls go shooby-dooby-doo, shooby-dooby-doo, shooby-dooby-doo. But we know owls go shooby-dooby-doo. They don't go hoot, hoot, hoot. Should we try it one more time with shooby-dooby-doo? Hoot, hoot went the little brown owl one day. Hoot, hoot went the little brown owl. Hoot, hoot went the little brown owl one day. And they all went hoot, hoot, hoot. But we know owls go shooby-dooby-doo, shooby-dooby-doo, shooby-dooby-doo. But we know owls go shooby-dooby-doo. They don't go hoot, hoot, hoot. I would like to share with you one of my favorite owl books. And it's actually a Caldecott winner from many years ago. It's a book called Owl Moon by Jane Yolen. And it is published by Philmel Books and illustrated by John Schoener. It was late, one winter night, long past my bedtime, when Pa and I went owling. There was no wind, the trees stood still as giant statues, and the moon was so bright the sky seemed to shine. Somewhere behind us a train whistle blew, long and low, like a sad, sad song. I could hear it through the woolen cap Pa had pulled down over my ears. A farm dog answered the train, and then a second dog joined in. They sang out trains and dogs for a real long time, and when their voices faded away, it was as quiet as a dream. We walked on toward the woods, Pa and I. Our feet crunched over the crisp snow, and little gray footprints followed us. Pa made a long shadow, but mine was short and round. I had to run after him, every now and then to keep up, and my short, round shadow bumped after me. But I never called out. If you go owling, you have to be quiet. That's what Pa always says. I had been waiting to go owling with Pa for a long, long time. We reached the line of pine trees, black and pointy against the sky, and Pa held up his hand. I stopped right where I was and waited. He looked up as if searching the stars, as if reading a map up there. The moon made his face into a silver mask. Then he called. Hoo, 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 hoo. The sound of a great horned owl. Hoo! Hoo, 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 hoo! Again he called out, and then again. After each call he was silent, and for a moment we both listened, but there was no answer. Pa shrugged, and I shrugged. I was not disappointed. My brothers all said sometimes there's an owl, and sometimes there isn't. We walked on. I could feel the cold as if someone's icy hand was palmed down on my back, and my nose and the tops of my cheeks felt cold and hot at the same time, but I never said a word. If you go owling, you have to be quiet and make your own heat. We went into the woods. The shadows were the blackest things I had ever seen. They stained the white snow. My mouth felt furry, for the scarf over it was wet and warm. I didn't ask what kinds of things hide behind black trees in the middle of the night. When you go owling, you have to be brave. Then we came to a clearing in the dark woods. The moon was high above us. It seemed to fit exactly over the center of the clearing, and the snow below it was whiter than the milk in a cereal bowl. I sighed, and Pa held up his hand at the sound. Put my mittens over the scarf over my mouth and listened hard, and then Pa called, "Hoo, hoo, 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 hoo." I listened and looked so hard my ears hurt and my eyes got cloudy with the cold. Pa raised his face to call out again, but before he could open his mouth, an echo came threading its way through the trees. Hoo, 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 hoo. Pa almost smiled, then he called back, "Hoo, hoo, 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 hoo," as if he and the owl were talking about supper, or about the woods, or the moon, or the cold. I took my mitten off the scarf off my mouth, and I almost smiled too. The owl's call came closer from high up in the trees on the edge of the meadow. Nothing in the meadow moved. All of a sudden, an owl shadow, part of the big tree shadow, lifted off and flew right over us. We watched silently with heat in our mouths, the heat of all those words we had not spoken. The shadow hooted again. Can you find the owl flying? Pa turned on his big flashlight and caught the owl just as it was landing on a branch. For 1 minute, 3 minutes, maybe even 100 minutes, we stared at each other. Then the owl pumped its great wings and lifted off the branch like a shadow without sound. It flew back into the forest. "Time to go home," Pa said to me. I knew then I could talk. I could even laugh out loud, but I was a shadow as we walked home. When you go owling, you don't need words or warm or anything but hope. That's what Pa says. The kind of hope that flies on silent wings under a shining owl moon. I hope you enjoyed our stories and songs about owls today, and that you'll consider registering and joining us on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, I think it's the 16th, at 4 o'clock hopefully most of you might be home from school and could join us to learn all about owls and meet some owl friends. I know it's on the screen and it's not the same as being together in person, but I hope you'll enjoy it and join us anyway. I do believe, or there were on Wednesday, still some Storytime art kits available, so if you haven't picked one up, you're welcome to do that. But I wanted to show you a quick, our quick owl activity, because even if you don't get a Storytime kit, you can do this at home if you have a toilet paper roll and some string. And mine is not going to be as fancy, because I'm not going to spend time decorating it much. But you could do a lot more decorating. So you're going to just cut off a little bit of the toilet paper roll so that it's about 3 inches tall. And you can round off the edges to give your toilet paper roll kind of a rounded top like an owl, because this is going to be our owl. And you can use markers or paints or whatever you have at home to make your owl. You can give him a head and some wings or a body, you know, kind of like that. I know it's kind of hard to see the brown on the brown, but it can be really simple with markers or crayons, or you can, if you really like to color and paint, you can make your owl really detailed and really spend some time on creating your owl. But I'm just gonna give him some eyes and a beak and some feathers. And you could even take some paper and make him some wings with some paper. I'm not gonna worry about wings today. But then you just need to make 2 holes. And you can use a hole punch or whatever you have at home to make 2 holes on this side and 2 holes on the other side. One kind of towards the top by his head and the other towards the bottom. And if you put wings on, you could put the holes right through the wings. And then all you need to do is take your piece of string. You've got your holes on each side. You got your owl. Take your string, and it can be thread. Now, thread might be a little thin, but it can be embroidery thread. It could be yarn. It could be string. Whatever you have that works like a string. And you just thread it through the holes, like so. So you've got string or yarn on this side of your owl and also on this side of your owl. And you just take your 2 ends and you tie it in a knot. You can maybe do a double knot if you want to, something that will hold in place. Okay, and then you take this end and you pull this end out, so you've got kind of an even side here, and I'm going to make it so that the knot is where I hold it. So you kind of have 2 sides, and then you're going to wind up your owl. Just kind of swing them around until the strings are really, the strings are kind of wound together on each side. And then once you get it really wound up, you just pull out and you've got a spinning owl. Kind of a fun, homemade, old-fashioned toy. You can make yourself a spinning owl. So have fun making your owl. Spend some time painting him or coloring him, more than I did. But I wanted to show you a way that you could make this at home, even if you don't get a Storytime kit. And then next week, look for owl pellet kits and some other art kits that have to do with owls to go with our owl program. And I'm going to leave you with one more little poem about owls. A wise old owl sat in an oak. The more he heard, the less he spoke. The less he spoke, the more he heard. Why aren't we all like that wise old bird? Have a great weekend, everybody. Let us know here at the library if you need anything, because we're here for you. Take good care.